Hi everyone, it's Chris, and tonight I'm sharing a friendship card that I have made using the stamp from Unity Stamp Company called Listen from the Heart. This stamp is designed by Phyllis Harris for Unity Stamp Company, and it is a fun little image, and I'm going to be doing some watercoloring with this. I'm using Distress inks tonight for both my stamping and for my watercolor. I'm using my original MISTI, and I've removed the mouse pad to give me that little bit of extra depth that I need for this rubber cling stamp. And I'm just straightening out my stamp. I'm using the grid, etch grid on the lid just to make sure that it is lined up properly. And I'm going to selectively ink this with the Distress inks. I'm using antique linen, tea dye, and then bundled sage for my image. And then I'm going to be using just some water to pull the colors out and be adding more color from the Distress inks to do my painting. And I realized that I have this slippery craft mat underneath my MISTI, so sorry my video gets a little messy here. But now that I've inked this, now I'm just going to do some very quick painting with Distress inks. I've wet my background just with water, and then I'm adding some broken china ink. And what I do is I just take my little ink cube, this is the Distress ink, and I smush it on. This is just a piece of laminated cardstock for my palette, and I just worked a little color into the sky. I let it dry, and then I'm working some bundled sage into the grassy areas in my foreground, and I'm just pulling that color, throughout the base, because I want to have a little bit of depth to my image. And then now I'm just going to be working on my main image, the girl and the horse. I am using antique linen to start with, putting a base color to her hair and to her skin tone. And then I'll be adding some tea dye through the horse's body. And I just work in from one area to the next. It doesn't take long for this ink to dry. I don't use a ton of water when I'm working with these smaller images. So really a minute or two is about all it takes. So you can move from, I'll go from the horse, then I'll go back to the girl's legs, and then back to the horse. And by the time I come back, each area is ready for another layer of color. So I have about 40 minutes into this card, and I've really, cut out a little bit of drying time, but just pretty much speeded up this video because it's kind of fun to watch as this image appears by working with the depth of the color. So I just want to encourage everybody to try watercolor and to play with their Distress inks, because they're so forgiving and so much fun. And just be patient with yourself, because it doesn't look impressive right away. But as you add the layers of color and build up that depth and the dimension just from the shading and just that intensity of color and contrast, you can really get some fun and pretty simple coloring in really not much time at all. The colors that I'm using for my horse, I've used several different browns, antique linen, tea dye. I used some brushed corduroy. Gathered twig is kind of the later colors where like the nostrils and a little bit of detail of the eye. I'm using Salty or Ocean is the color of her dress. And I'm bringing in the tea dye, giving a little bit of color to her cheeks and the backs of her legs and arms. Just a little bit of a suntan look to her skin. And I just keep moving from her hair and her skin and back to the horse, making sure that I have a little bit of drying time between these layers. For the mane of the horse, I've used some scattered straw and some antique linen just to make sure that that is nice, a sunny, bright blonde color to that mane. I want to kind of match up with the girl. and then I liked the blue of her dress as a contrast to her hair. Now the darker color that I'm adding to the hooves of the horse, this is gathered twig, and I've drawn in a little bit of the eye. Now I'm going to add a little bit of peeled paint. I'm just kind of sketching in some more blades of grass. I haven't put a lot of detail into her feet because I wanted them covered kind of in the blades of the grass. She is barefoot, and I knew that by coloring too much of her feet, that would it would bleed in with when I colored the green of the grass in. And now I'm adding just a little bit of shading to the kind of the cheeks of the horse. And see, now here I've added some forest moss for the nostrils of the horse, and as that was drying, I realized I didn't like it. It was a little bit too green, so I added some water, and I just took a paper towel and I pulled some of that color off. Now I was happy with my painting, so I put it back in my MISTI because I'd left my stamp there, and then I just used some scattered straw and antique linen, and then I put some of those details of her hair back in. And now I'm adding my greeting, and I used a little plastic sheet to make sure that I had it all lined up, and I've stamped that with Gina K Warm Cocoa ink. And now I'm just going to trim my card and add it to a warm cocoa card base. And there is my quick card. Thanks for watching.